My name is Natasha Morgan. I live here in Daylesford, about an hour and a half north of Melbourne. We moved here in April of 2022. We're on a 515 metre square block that I call Little Cottage on a Hill. It's a tiny block of land, but what it has is two beautiful wide verges, and we are so blessed here to have those deep volcanic soils. So it was kind of a bit of a no-brainer when I saw this house. We're very lucky here that Hepburnshire has local laws that allow for nature strip planting. So using their guidelines, I've created both an outer garden and an inner garden. The outer garden being my productive space of flowers and vegetable gardens. And then the inner world is, I suppose, a bit more private. You can lift it up. I've always loved gardening and I've always loved making gardens. So I started my journey with architecture and I'm trained as a landscape architect. I've been really fortunate that I've got to work on some incredible projects. I spent 6 years working on the Australian Garden Stage 2 at Cranbourne Botanic Gardens. So my role included everything from the redesign of the initial master plan all the way down to the details of construction. The dream of living in the country had probably been something sort of bubbling in the back of my head since my early 20s. So in 2013, came across this 5-acre property in Spargo Creek, 20 minutes out of Daylesford. It was a lifestyle that's governed by the cycles and the rhythms of the land, of living with nature. The whole premise of this garden is to synthesise the best of those 9 years that we had at Spargo Creek. And it's very different to any garden that I've done before. Usually I have quite a restrained palette where I might have 5 or 6 different or up to 10 plants. But I think that moving from a property of 5 acres to a plot of 515 square metres, there was sort of a sense of liberation and just freedom. So I kind of threw caution to the wind and I've just included a riot of colours, but I've planted them in swathes so that the colour kind of moves through, and so I've got dusty tones and reds that move through in purples and lots of grey foliage that also come through, and then sort of pops of pink and yellows as well to offset. So it really for me is a beautiful celebration of colour and form and texture, but it's also planted in a way that it has interest right throughout the seasons. And for me, a small garden has got to work hard. So you might find these funny things strewn around the garden, and actually it's a bottle wrapped in a plastic bag that's supposed to depict a dead cockatoo. So an old farmer told me once that if you put this in the garden at the arms or handles of the bag pointing outwards like that a cockatoo will think it's a dead cockatoo in the garden and they will leave my plants alone and not eat them down to the ground. Every time that I put these bottles down, I have no problems with cockatoos. But the one time that I took it away, I just thought it was way too ugly, is when the cockatoos came in and they ate all that beautiful, tender spring foliage right down to the ground. This is the north side of my verge garden. This long space through here is where I've got all of my fruit and vegetables, grasses here, this big embankment planting that separates this space from the road beyond. I've got these footpaths or grass paths through here that allow access, and a series of smaller garden beds in which I can grow my seasonal crops. It's got a whole range of different structures in it using some old fencing that I've just propped up together. And it's a great way to create some three-dimensionality but also have something that's super functional for growing. Having a small space means that I have to really reimagine the way I do things. In this space here, I can't have an orchard, so I have instead created an espalier orchard. What I like about this Huonville crabapple is that it's dwarfed onto what they call a step-over dwarfing stock, which means that it will never be taller than this. So in other words, that you could step over it. And it also has crabapples, which are about so big. The pink flesh crabapple are beautiful, roasted, and also my kids love them dehydrated as an apple chip. I've used this reinforcing wire to provide some structure. I like to use a Velcro strap. I used to use some white plastic budding tape, but I really don't want to be using plastic anymore. And I'm just going to train it along the reinforcing wire at this level. I've also got pears, which will form a second tier. So they will actually grow above and they will be espaliered across these two runs of the fence as well. So in effect, I've got a vertical orchard, which is also a beautiful feature along the fence line, and I've got a double stack of fruit trees. For me, I love reimagining things. So how can a composting tower or just a compost heap look beautiful? This is my composting potato tower. This is so incredibly simple to make. It's just a wattle and wire woven timber and wire fencing. And all I've done is just put a section of it in a circle. I've just lined it with this mesh here, just to stop those vines from falling out underneath. Lay it up, then potatoes, and then I just keep adding to it all my compost material. What I love about it is that it is super simple. On this small property, I look at it right through the lens of productive landscape. So I have got rhubarb here that I grow for my rhubarb rose and vanilla bean syrup. I have flowers that I cut for floristry. I have vegetable beds that supplies me and my kids. I also make sure that I always have more than enough for me to make pickles and preserves. And that's the beauty of growing your own food, is that there's something to share or trade or enjoy with other people. Hello, Chookies. This is my studio, and like everything else on this property, it has to be multifunctional. So it's the space where I make my syrups and preserves. It's where I run my garden design workshops. It's where I tinker. It's where I have some quiet time escaping from my kids. And it's basically where all the creative stuff happens. The beauty of living here is that this garden enables me to be a full-time mum to my two young kids who are 11 and nearly 13. And it enables me also to have a home-based business. This garden really, for me, is a laboratory to try things out. As a gardener, it's a great opportunity to see what works and what doesn't.